ever about certainty. Carbon dioxide levels continue to rise, but global temperatures have plateaued in the past decade. A gap is widening between reality and the predictions of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. But we rarely hear much about that inconvenient truth.
And the warmaholics, if I can call them that, the warmaholics, they say that carbon dioxide is driving the current warming. And I agree that we have elevated levels of carbon dioxide. I agree that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, but I'm not sure of the extent to which the elevated levels of carbon dioxide are actually driving current warming. And certainly if we look at global temperatures over the last 10 years, they've stalled, but carbon dioxide levels have continued to increase. So we actually have a breakdown in that correlation.
It's very inconvenient, isn't it? That you've got the forecast going there and the reality going there.
Well, it's temperatures have plateaued. Global temperatures have plateaued.
That's right.
Yes. It is inconvenient.
It is inconvenient.
So what people sometimes do is they put the observational data aside, the satellite data, and they just show you the model data. They retreat to virtual science.
Jennifer Marahasi is a trained biologist, paid by a right-wing think tank, the Institute of Public Affairs. The IPA has no policy on global warming, but that hasn't stopped her critics suggesting she is a political scientist and lobbyist.
You know what the problem is with this whole thing? It's not that there's people who dispute the science, it's that industries use those people for their own ends, to give themselves another short-term profit, when we really need to start moving together to deal with a crisis that will affect every one of us unless we move in a timely manner.
It's probably assumed that big business is funding your opinions. Is that the case?
Certainly not. Business at the moment is really on the other side. They can see that there's a buck to make out of, potentially out of carbon trading, out of, being greener than thou. It is, though, important to recognise that money can corrupt.
High atop King's Tableland in the Blue Mountains west of Sydney, the effects of an earlier, more dramatic era of climate change are obvious to the trained eye.
The coal seam was laid down when this was swampy forest, when it was warmer here than it is today, than it is now, when it was wetter, and when atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were higher than they are today.
Amid the grandeur of natural architecture, the idea of a benign, pleasant climate falls away. The observations of recent weather events, so central to the Al Gore thesis, seem fragmentary and meaningless.
In his movie, An Inconvenient Truth, he actually talks about how hurricanes record shows an increase in number and intensity, and he talks about hurricanes since 1975, but there's actually good data that goes back 100 years, and if he'd gone back to the 1940s, he would have actually seen that there were more intense hurricanes then there was a bit of a lull, and then from the 1970s there had been an increase in hurricane intensity, so he was cherry-picking the data. This is Al Gore.
To the believers, the world is full of signs and omens of impending doom. The ice melt in Antarctica, a symptom of the growing crisis.
All of a sudden, magically, these big icebergs floating off the South Island of New Zealand last year, and news crews went out with helicopters and people landed on them to have their picture taken. It might seem like fun, but it's not a really great thing to have icebergs floating by Dunedin, New Zealand.
But the skeptics say steep variability has always been a feature of Earth's climate. And most of these rapid changes remain unexplained or fiercely debated.
We know there's been a little ice age in the 17th century. We know that the Thames was frozen for more than 2 months, to the point where a whole lot of stuff went onto the top of the ice because nobody owned it. It was free, so merchants set up fairs there. There were tournaments held there. Carriages went on. The Thames, has anyone ever seen the Thames frozen? But we know it was. There's a huge amount of record of that. And we know that in the Middle Ages, the monasteries in England were making their own wine, and they're making wine again in England now because it's another warm period. We know these things.
That's an entirely fatuous argument. The climate's always changing, but we've never seen a strong trend like this, with the rapid meltdown of the Arctic ice cap, with very strong sea level rises now globally and temperature increases. This is something new, and we know what it's caused by. It's caused by this burden of pollution. Now, the atmosphere is 500 times smaller than the ocean, and that's why it's so vulnerable to pollution. I've lived through 3 global air pollution crises. We had the acid rain problem, the hole in the ozone layer, and now the warming problem.
It's that personal dimension to this debate that worries students of science. It hints at a tendency for us to believe the path of history leads inexorably and only to this moment.
We always think that now is the most important time of all, and that's because we live in it. So if you go back through the last 2,500 years of human history, you'll find person after person saying humanity is faced with the gravest crisis of all time. And today it's climate change.
A lot of people would like to save the earth. They'd like to save the environment. It's been said that environmentalism is the new religion for urban atheists. But if you really care about the environment, then do a science degree. You know, understand it. Be curious about it. Don't worry so much about the politics.
But the believers say the time for debate and further learning is over. Remarkably, consensus is to be the only way forward for the planet.
If you went to the doctor and he said there's a 99% chance you've got a malignant cancer, if you act on it today, your chances of recovery are reasonably good. If you delay to get more advice and leave it 3 months, you've got a much worse prognosis. What would you do?
I'd get a second opinion.
And would you wait for 3 months for the second opinion?
No, I'd go right away. I wouldn't spend time arguing about,
but you can always get another opinion.
I'd definitely get another opinion.
You'll eventually get to the guy who'll give you the 1% opinion.
In the Little Ice Age, the Church decreed witchcraft to be the cause. Thousands of innocent women were burnt on bonfires. Have we come so far from such faith-based propositions when science is still divided into believers and deniers?
Deniers I dislike strongly. It's a reference to the Holocaust, most immediately, and earlier than that, it's a reference to those who denied the existence of God. And so, in my view, it's a very silly label to put, because it suggests that those who are using it are, have the truth in them. They are with God in this. And I don't think the IPCC is God.
But ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, it's on that spec that all our ancestors were born and lived and died. And it's on that spec that all our children are being born and growing up and making their lives and making their futures. And it's on that spec that all our battles were fought and all our victories were won. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our only home. We'll see you all later.
Adam Shan with our cover story. Makes you think, doesn't it? The producer was Nick Farron.